And I bolted out the door and I went crazy. I did projects, worked on vehicles. I even shampooed the carpets in here. I was just going nuts, right? Because I was like set free.
DJ, how did you find carnivore?
Well, I found carnivore a little differently than most of your guests, Dave. I'm more interested in longevity since I've been extremely lucky at 63 years old and I've never been on medicine or had any issues other than weight gain over the winter time. And I started out on a farm in the 60s in southern Wisconsin. It was a dairy farm. And we, um, we had 40 cows and we had 60 pigs and laying chickens and meat chickens and ducks, geese, guinea fowl. We had it all, and the milkman would bring butter once or twice a week. So, in hindsight, I guess we had the carnivore right there. But unfortunately, in the house, there lurked cereal and peanut butter and jelly and my mom's homemade bread. So, despite being in a healthy environment, I'm quite sure as kids we were hooked up on the usual sugar and carbs, right? But with 250 acres and unlimited exercise, we were able to burn it off. By the time you're 6 or 7 on the farm in those days, you're gamefully employed. So, it went through and uh, farming and high interest rates. It wasn't too conducive to being a farmer, so I would join the military, and I went through that for 4 years, and then I got into the private sector and worked the same company for 38 years. And my last 25 years, I was a team leader. We ran a laboratory, and the reason I mentioned it is because we had teams of visitors that would come every week, and it'd be a different group of 5 or 7 engineers and scientists and so on, and they'd use the laboratory. And much like you, how did you find carnivore? I would during the day say, well, how are you doing? And a half hour later, I would find out, if they were doing good, they talked about their kids and the vacations. If they weren't doing good, they talked about their medical issues. And over hundreds of groups of people coming in, I've heard just about all the same stories you've heard on your channel, and then some. And the diabetes is just so prevalent; it's unbelievable. Um, People you wouldn't suspect, and they have it too. You know, uh, from 2000 and on, I would gain weight. We would spend 12 hours in the laboratory. I'd come home at 8 at night, eat and go to sleep and do it all over again. My life, work balance, there was no such thing, and on the weekends you have to catch up with everything you didn't do during the week. So that went on, and I'd gain weight over the winter, and then I'd get scared. I didn't want to get diabetic like so many people were. So in true farmer fashion, I would try to work it off. I would exercise brutally during the summer and lose 20, 30 pounds again. Well, when you get older, like 55 or so, that doesn't work so well anymore. And so in 2019, I was listening to Sten Ekberg, and he was describing ketosis, and I said, I think I'm going to do that. So in the middle of the year there, I achieved ketosis. And let me tell you, the first thing that happened, I had a little meter that you breathe into, and as soon as that went green, the brain fog that I've been accumulating over the years lifted. So I'm an engineering manager, and my main job is making decisions, and it had grown difficult. I couldn't make a decision. I had a hard time, and then once I did make one, it kept coming back, like I was uncertain, like I did the wrong thing. Well, when the ketones started flowing, they go to your brain, your heart, and your skeletal muscles. Decisions were instantaneous and final. I even made notes because I couldn't believe it. It's another one of these things that creeps up on you. I guess your brain gets insulin resistant, glucose resistant, because it's only, it's run on glucose for 50 years since you were an infant or whatever. And it sure does like ketones, let me tell you. So shortly thereafter, I made some investment decisions, moved a bunch of money around, and 2 years later, I retired. So there's a benefit for you, right? Clear thinking. Anyway, I was going along fine on keto. I lost 40 pounds, and then in 2020, everything hit the fan and was disrupted with the plague, right? At the same time, my wife was going through a medical crisis, and I can describe that later, but suffice it to say, she was being tortured by the medical establishment. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. She was in a lot of agony, and I got a deep look into medicine, the hospitals, and all, and it was a bad time. I mean, there were so many people going in the hospital at that time. So anyway, we got through it by the end of 2020. My wife's condition rectified itself, and I said, this is enough, and I decided to retire in mid 2021, and I did. The first thing I said, we're going to have to take on our health problems ourselves. So I ordered up full spectrum blood tests just off the internet, $450 a piece. That's nothing. We went and got our arteries scanned and our neck and our bone density. We were both bone density of 1, which I guess hard as a rock. I don't know, but we got our eyesight checked. We got our omega-3. We did everything. Only thing we haven't done is a CAC scan, which I'm going to do anyway. But my wife was a smoker, so it was good to find out she wasn't clogged up anywhere in her abdomen or neck or whatever. But I didn't have hardly anything, so I wasn't too concerned. I never smoked. And like one of your guests, I think she was from Toronto, Violet. She says, you're careful your whole life not to get addicted to drugs or cigarettes or alcohol or anything. But the sugar and the bread, you were already lit up back as a kid. And that's what eventually I got down to in the spring of this year. I went on a golf trip. We go down to South Carolina around St. Patrick's Day, and we golf for 4 days. By the 4th day, my knees were on fire, either from, being sedentary all winter to going and doing a lot of activity. Or, I thought maybe, it was eating out and the junk food, because we don't eat out hardly ever. My wife's very fussy, and it's just not, we'll just stay home and eat, But so when I got back from the golf trip, I said, I don't like this knee thing. I don't want to damage my knees and end up having joint replacement or something like that. So I just happened to come across your videos and person after person, oh, my joint pain's gone in 2 weeks and this and that and the other. So I said, okay, Dave, I was on keto, and my only 3 transgressions that I hadn't gotten rid of was 1 or 2 slices of bread a day. I was eating a lot of mixed nuts, just grabbing in the bowl and digging a handful out when you get hungry. And I'd have popcorn once a week, and that was it. The rest of the time I ate steak, I ate meat. I didn't eat a lot of fat. That was probably, a mistake on keto. But when I went carnivore, I dumped those 3 things, and it was just like everybody else that comes on your channel. Inflammation went away. My knees were feeling great in 2 weeks, and I bolted out the door and I went crazy. I did projects, worked on vehicles. I even shampooed the carpets in here. I was just going nuts, right? Because I was like set free. And I couldn't believe that just those three things. Now, I don't know which ones. There's a lot of almonds, so maybe oxalates, but it's more likely the bread, right? Um, so in the 2 months that I've been carnivore since March 28th, I've dropped 20 pounds, and I've been lifting weights, riding bicycle, working in the yard, just a blur. And I feel great. It was just like turning the switch to feeling great mode. So, I've never had issues with acid reflux. I've never taken prescription medicines of any kind. I never even used painkillers because on the farm I learned how to live with pain. So that's my
And
story.
that's just 2 months.
Yes.
Wow.
So, if you start this thing just being proactive and you don't have a bunch of issues, you don't wait till you're, way overweight or you got joint replacements going on. It's like a new lease on life. At 63 years old, I feel fantastic from head to toe.
I know you sent me a list of things that had changed for you. Would you mind talking us through some more of those things?
Well, I sent you a list of things that I was afraid of contracting. Okay, the diseases of SAD, if you will. Cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, dementia, inflammation, brain fog, fatty liver, which my wife went through that one, sarcopenia, which you got to worry about, right? Joint replacement, arthritis, osteoporosis, autoimmune disease, psychological issues, depression, anxiety, nervous eating, and then all the bowel disease. And that's just a subset of what can happen to you on the SAD diet. My goal, my studies since I retired, is how to avoid these things. Little did I know a simple elimination diet and eating meat, I think, is the key to most of them. Would you agree? I don't know.
Uh, Definitely. It definitely seems that way. Yeah.
I mean, you take cardiovascular disease, and I read this book right here. I highly recommend it to everybody. You had them on your channel,
Yeah, very good book. Yeah.
and I mean, this whole LDL thing is crazy, if you ask me. How can you feel perfectly well? Your blood your blood tests come back good, but the one thing is wrong, right? The LDL must be wrong. So that's just insanity to me.
Mm, yeah.
Um, so I don't like medicine. There's too many side effects. It's expensive. A lot of my friends, people I know, are on Ozempic now, and I don't know what the consequences are going to be of that. Do you have to take it the rest of your life?
That's the business model, I guess, right? Because if you stop taking it, you just start putting weight back on, right?
From a business standpoint, I'm sure that's their idea. Um, the issue with that is, I think they want to do that so they can eat their sad foods and do their partying, but not get fat from it or control their diabetes or whatever. But this method here that you've been touting is much simpler. I mean, grocery shopping is nothing. I mean, and I'm looking for ranchers. I'm going to buy a half a cow at a time and lay in a bunch of bacon, and I'm good to go. You can buy eggs anywhere around here. So, but
So,
yeah,
has your wife come along for the ride with you with this?
no, my wife. Let's go through her episode because it may help somebody. Uh, she went through a very tough time with her mother being ill and then dying and all the aftermath of that. She got depressed. She was a lifelong smoker, and she's always been a pop sipper. She'd sip on a 16-ounce soda all day long. She couldn't have coffee unless it had 2 heaping teaspoons of sugar. So at one point I calculated she was eating 110 pounds of sugar a year just from those 2 things. And that's not good. Now, fructose, uh, drinking pop all day, the liver has to process fructose into fat. And if the body doesn't need it, the liver has to eat it, right? So you start developing fatty liver. And she developed it to the point where there's a protein that the liver puts out called albumin, and it binds fluids into your blood vessels. Otherwise, they leak out without it. Well, she woke up one morning and both her feet were swollen, which is kind of unusual. I mean, they were swollen pretty significantly, and it just got worse and worse. And pretty soon she couldn't sleep on her back because she felt like she was drowning in her own fluids, which she probably was. And the doctors couldn't figure it out. So she went a year undiagnosed. We fired doctors. We went all over the place. One doctor finally said, well, go down to the lymphedema lab therapy place and see what they can do for you. So went down there, and the therapist, she wasn't the doctor, she says, oh, yeah, you got lymphedema. I said, oh, yeah, okay. So anyway, we wrapped her legs, her lower legs, and squeezed the water out of there, the fluids out of there. And that went on for a year, and my wife was terrified. She thought she was going to lose her legs. She caught a cold, almost suffocated because she had COPD from a lifetime of smoking. I said, that's it, cigarettes are gone. Well, then she turned to sugar big time, not just sipping pop. She was drinking root beer floats and eating ice cream. And sure enough, I said, well, you got to watch that. And in a few months, she was diabetic. And, when you wrap your feet, you can wrap your toes and you can wrap your foot, but the area in between, you can't really get pressure on. Well, that blew out, started weeping, and there was growths and became infected. And we ended up in the emergency room in the later stages of 2020. I said, take her A1C. And it came back at 13.2, which is almost off the scale. And so, they put her on insulin, and they got that a little under control. And then she had to go in for surgery on her feet during the peak of the pandemic. They were letting 650 people in and out of the hospital each day. So we get on there, and she had to be tested for cancer first, and then they did plastic surgery on her feet to repair them. And she wouldn't eat the hospital food. It was all carbs, despite her being a raging diabetic. Of course, we couldn't convince we finally convinced one doctor to call the cafeteria and send up hard-boiled eggs, but it was a challenge. Anyway, she had the surgery, and the doctor did a great job. And as they were pulling her off the operating table to put her in bed, the attendant brought the wrong bed. He brought someone else's bed in there, someone else's hospital bed. And it turned out, after we found out later, that it was a COVID patient's bed. So they threw her into blankets and pillows full of bacteria or virus particles, right? Later that day, she woke up and she says, this is my bed, and freaking out. And the nurses says, oh, honey, you're just waking up, and it's sure this is your bed. Well, I got up and I looked, and there was somebody else's plastic bag with their glasses and personal belongings before they went to surgery. I said, no, it's not her bed. We didn't make the connection that it was a COVID person's bed, but she had a runny nose, and I had one later that night, and we had it. Well, 2 days later, they threw her out of the hospital because they needed the room with all the patients. So, they took a 3 by 20 inch strip of skin off her thigh to put on her feet, and then right down to the meat. And we're trying to get her in a car and get her home, and she's bleeding, and it was just no fun. Anyway, we got home, and the next day I said, something's wrong. I feel like I'm plugged into a light socket here, and she says, yeah, I feel weird too. And I went and got tested, and sure enough, we had it. So we had the 10-day version. I didn't know if either one of us was going to make it. We had a brave nurse that came in and dressed her wounds, and she was a godsend. She helped us, and we got through it. So what happened after 18 days in the hospital not eating and then 10 days of COVID not eating is her fatty liver cleared out. And she never had swelling again in her feet. It's gone. We both, must have gone through autophagy. We felt better, and she's fine now. She's on low carb, off all meds. She just has trouble breathing. So if she loses her breath, it's hard for her to get it back. So I take care of everything and take care of her, and that's the deal. But you go through an experience like that. She has real thin veins, so I mean, she was perforated. She looked like she'd been shot with a shotgun on both arms, and it was just a horrible experience to go through just because of soda and sugar. And so that's why I'm so proactive at making sure I don't get to that point. Somebody has to do stuff around here, right? So that's her story.
Well, I'm glad things cleared up, but yeah, that must have been an absolute nightmare at the worst time for it all to happen as well.
But then there's serendipity with the fasting and clearing out her liver. So it worked out in the end. I guess it was meant to do so, but it was very strange. And my look into the medical system, even before the virus hit, I didn't like what I saw. Her GP just enters her symptoms into a probability routine and spits out a prescription or sends you off to a specialist. I mean, and your 7 minutes are up, right? It's I don't even go to the doctor, Dave. That's my goal, is to live like a 20-year-old and not go in. Right?
Yeah.
So looking at Carnivore from 200,000 feet, right? Let's talk about what it does for you, potentially. So the diseases of SAD, it either resolves them, reduces them, or prevents them, right? All those diseases I had named off. When you go into ketosis and the ketones hit your brain, that solves the thinking problem. Your mind is clear and you can study and remember things. That is a biggie. I mean, that can change people's lives, right? Look at you. You started a YouTube channel and it's probably made a difference in your life, the clear thinking, right? Absolutely. It solves the nutrition problem. Your body says, I'm satiated. I'm full. I have never experienced full until carnivore, Dave. I was always hungry, right? It solves the energy problem. So you're running on fat, which I have. I started out at 285. I'm still 265. So I've got a ways to go. I've got plenty of fuel, and I've been burning it off as best I can. And then if you stick with it, it solves the fitness problem, right? Look at yourself. You're jumping off stairs. Your stomach's flat. That's my goal. I can see my feet now, but my stomach still isn't flat. So I'm getting there.
It'll come with time.
When you look at those
amazing
5 bullet points, why would you not want to give carnivore a try?
So one of the points you mentioned there that I'd like to pick up on was the satiation or feeling full. So what is the difference for you, like eating this way and the way you were eating before? Like, what's the difference feeling full?
Well, over the last couple of weeks and what I'm eating, we eat about between 9 and 10 in the morning. And she has her bacon and eggs and 1 slice of toast. That's her carbs for the day. And I've been eating either a hamburger omelet or a bacon omelet or steak and eggs. And I rotate through those. And over the last couple of weeks, I make a pretty big omelet, and I put cheese or not, it doesn't matter. But I get about 3/4 of the way through it, and I'm done. Sometimes I'm full, and I'm a plate cleaner from way back, and that's a new experience for me. So, on the farm, you're going to go out and do some draconian manual labor and typically burn it off. But, I'm 63. I'm watching YouTube. I'm not that active, right? So that holds me until 8 in the afternoon, and I keep a hard-boiled egg or a tin of sardines or some bacon around. And if I can't take it, I'll have one of those and go to bed. That's it. So that's all I'm eating during the day. And uh, you know, during my 40s and 50s, when I did P90X for 2 years straight. It's a 90-day program. I did it for 2 years. I was in fantastic shape, but I was always hungry. My wife called them the divorce diets because I was grumpy and snapping at people. And, you're out, your brain's telling you you're not nourished. You're hungry all day. Is supper done yet? Get moving, and that was all, it was bad. I got into shape. I lost the weight, but at what price? So carnivore, I've been calm. Like everybody says, you get calm probably because your brain says, well, I'm satisfied now. I'll leave you alone. You know, you don't have to think about food. You can do what you want. And, now my goal is to optimize my fitness. I'm not worried about losing weight. That should just come off naturally with all the exercise I'm getting and stuff. And I think I can ride through the winter on carnivore without ballooning up 20 or 30 pounds. Let's hope so. And, I want to lift weights. I got into lifting weights a couple years ago, and I was surprised I could still do it after all these years. And I love it. I feel great. What's the one Dr. Sarah that says all roads lead to dopamine? Well, she's right. I've been sore more days than not at the end of the day these last 2 months, but the next morning I'm fine again and get right after it again. So I'm very happy, Dave.
Yeah. So how has your sleep been? Your sleep improved?
Very quickly, someone mentioned their tongue shrinking, and I said, holy cow, there's a lot of room in there. My tongue shrank, my cheeks got thin. I can only imagine my sinus cavities withdrew, and I'm breathing through my nose again. I've been a mouth breather, like you mentioned, I think, one of your videos. And as soon as you're breathing through your nose, things are normal. So no snoring. I sleep real good. If I get too sore or I get wound up about something, I'll wake up early, 3 or 4 in the morning, but I just get up and go. I'm not tired. So it's that's also a great benefit of this approach.
Have you noticed any changes in your oral health since you went carnivore?
Funny you say that. I got one of these tooth cams. My teeth were clean going in, and they're still clean. Now, I don't know if I'm going to go 700 days like Blaze, without brushing my teeth. I doubt that. I'm going to take showers once in a while too. But it makes sense, right? The dentists have never been able to get me for the last 40 years. Never, no cavities, no nothing, because I avoided soda and all that stuff because I knew that was bad. But now I can avoid the dentist altogether. Just plug this baby in. If I find a little tartar, there's always something you could scrape it off with, right? So that's another problem I'm not going to have. So my gums look good. No bleeding when I brush my teeth. It's all good.
That's awesome. It's this all adds up to feeling better, but it feels like this also all adds up to a lot of time saving throughout the day. Not thinking about snacks, not doing the maintenance you have to do on your body all the time. It's yeah.
Very efficient. Um, I've been watching a young man from New Zealand. His name's Max German. He started a carnivore YouTube channel. He started carnivore when he was 20 years old. Can you imagine all the wasted money and time that you could have saved during your life? I mean, I hope people go and check out Max. He's got a an ebook, Carnivore Beginner Guide, and he's trying to reach young people. But I watch him. He's going through school. He's a personal trainer specializing in carnivore. He's in great shape. He's got lots of good tips on how to optimize things. And we need the young people to come over, and because they got to work and pay Social Security and all that stuff, so we can keep going, right? I mean, we need their help, but I mean, it'll make their lives better, I would think. So
Definitely. I mean, especially, you hear so much about mental health issues and stuff with the younger generations now. And, you could put a lot of that down to things like social media and growing up with a device in your pocket where you've got access to the world anytime you want. But diets are getting worse. Like when I was at school, half the class didn't have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, right? But it's getting to that point now. There was like one fat kid in every year level. It's not like that anymore. And I think probably diet is a bigger contributor to mental health than anything.
yeah, when I left high school, the pop machines had just made it into the cafeteria, and I can only imagine what an array of rubbish that's in there now. You know, uh, the neighbor is the food lady at the local high school, and she tells me, it's not the best stuff. It's cheap seed oil, and like TV dinner type crap that the kids are getting. And part of being retired for 3 years, Dave, and I do a lot of the shopping, is I get to see the other side of life. You know, I go out to the store at 9, 10 in the morning or 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and all the retirees and the elderly are out. And, I see them buying cereal and all this just because it's cheap, and I know a lot of people who run into dementia probably when they didn't need to, because they're eating this cheap food, sugary stuff, way into their 80s, and I think that's got a lot to do with dementia. But now even young people are getting dementia, younger people my age or less. And, I've lost several friends, 60-year-olds. They had their lives made, but they didn't pay attention to their diabetes. One guy on the 2023 golf trip to South Carolina, he says, after breakfast on the fourth day, he says, I'm going to go walk on the beach. Anybody want to go? And he got a mile down the road and he grabbed his chest, said, I don't feel good. And boom, dead right on the beach. Massive heart attack. Well, come to find out, he was walking around with an A1C of 13. And, you're just not going to make it. This guy was, a successful career. Him and his wife both had everything you could ever want and didn't pay attention.
Yeah, it's terrible. And you mentioned you go to the grocery store and everyone's buying the cereal and stuff like that because it's cheap. And this is the real dilemma, is yes, it's cheap, but like what is the health bill and the prescriptions bill as a result of that cheap food,
Yeah, and the cost and misery in your out years, which personally I'd rather not have, So I mean, people need to be introspective. They need to look at other people, and like you and I have listened to hundreds of people tell their stories, and if you don't learn from that, well, then nobody can help you, right? You've got to pay attention. Uh, the grocery stores are just filled with just so much junk. I'm going to the meat department. I grab some butter, and I'm blasting out of there. And The rest of the store is a waste, but this cheap junk food is also their profit margin, right? It's how they built a store the size of a football field, you know. And imagine the soda companies, billion-dollar corporations selling carbonated sugar water. Hello, do you think it's addictive? People have to think about what they're putting in their bodies, Dave. I don't know how to put it more bluntly than that, but when you see a corporation like that, and they're not evil, I suppose, because people are doing it of their own free will. And since it doesn't kill you outright, they can't be sued or persecuted. And then we see how that went with cigarettes, right? Oh, there's no proof it causes cancer. Yeah, okay, right, yeah. But
do you think that there's ever going to be a point in the future where it kind of goes like cigarettes, or do you think it's just we have to? It has to be something that each of us comes to on our own.
There's been attempts, I think, in New York City. They wanted to ban, supersized sodas and all that, but you're fighting people's addictions, Dave, and you know what that's like. When we took my wife's cigarettes away and then had to take her sugar away a year later, that was a double whammy, man. It was not pleasant around here, let me tell you. People, I think the brain fog makes them weak, and they're filled with anxiety to begin with, so they're afraid of change. And it's like a death spiral. It's hard to get them out of it. Usually it's the fear of death, or actually coming close to death, is what it takes sometimes to get them out of it.
Yeah, there needs to be some kind of event,
a crisis,
and it's like, okay, yeah, I need to stop this, otherwise it's just going to get worse from here.
Yes, I don't like needles. I don't like being carved on. I had my tonsils out when I was 5 and my appendix when I was 10. And I got a roughing the punter when I was a senior and playing football and broke my femur. Back then, they put you in traction for 4 weeks. And let me tell you, I went in at 185 and I came out at 112 at 6 feet tall. Because you lay for 4 weeks, you're immobile with a pin stuck through your leg and a weight hanging from it, So when you think about the elderly fall down and break a hip or break a leg or whatever, and they have to lay down for a few weeks, the muscle loss is like you can't hardly recover from it. So that's why the fitness solution of carnivore, I have had no problem putting on muscle. I've lost weight, but I've been transforming at the same time. And the longer you can keep that muscle on your body, you may not even get injured in a fall. That would be my goal, is to, when I'm 80, I don't want to fall down and get back up again. So for all, most of your guests have been my age or even more. And, and the people watching perhaps are the same age group. I don't know if you do demographics or anything, but you got to think about your future, and you want to be sound going in, because I know I've got a lot of friends in their 80s and stuff, and one lady stubbed her toe on a sidewalk crack and broke her hip, just walking around on the street. It only, you start dragging your feet and you catch it on something, you lose your balance, and, her shoulders and arms weren't strong enough to break the fall, and she got severely injured. One of the guys he used to work for was working on a house, and he fell down and shredded both his shoulders, had to get, what do they call that? Rotator cuff on both of them, smashed all his front teeth out. He looked like Charlie Brown with a tooth hanging down. Story after story, you got to maintain your strength. And I think carnivore is excellent for that.
Yeah. So, have you had any friends that have expressed any interest?
Well, no, because they're doing Ozempic for one, and then I'm kind of like the boy who cried wolf. I said, well, P90X for 2 years is great. And then I'd go on the way off the wagon. So they've seen me do this before, lose 40, 50 pounds, get in great shape, and then something happens where you regress. But I'm not going to do it this time. There's I'm too old and there's too much at stake and I'm not working anymore. So I have no excuse to fall off the wagon. Plus I got to take care of my wife. So
Yeah. So if a friend did come to you and say, "Look, okay, how do I get started?" How would you recommend they go about doing that?
well, it depends on their condition, of course. If they're 500 pounds or diabetic, I'd say start it immediately. If there's nothing else wrong with them and they just want to transition for better health, I would say like Dr. Bart, I'd say take 4 weeks and drop off sugar, then drop off bread, then drop off fruits or whatever. Do it sequentially. But if you've got health issues that are severe, I would do it immediately. Just, I had no transition issues with my guts or anything. Even when I went keto the first time, I felt queasy for a day, and then the brain fog lifted, and I was on ketones. So, but we're all different, but if you've got serious health issues, the sooner you get them corrected, the better. If, in my mind, anyway.
Yeah, definitely. So, DJ, how can people reach out to you? Do you have a YouTube or any social media?
Yeah, I have a YouTube, but I haven't. I've never done a video or whatever. So just use my email, put that up there, and I'd be happy to discuss ideas with anybody. In fact, the guests, I've emailed many of them. We go back and forth on things, and I think that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, well, I'll include that email in the show notes. DJ, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you sharing your story and experience.
Thank you, Dave.